say he was an actor, the first storm. They say he was young, beautiful, and mad. They say his hair was snow white and glowed like lightning. It was long and always windswept, and that his eyes were the color of water when it reflects the sky. When he spoke, it was thunder. When he cried, it rained. They say it rained the day he was born, but of course they do. They say it was the first storm, but of course they say that too. The first storm was so far back that no one was calling them storms. Plenty of people connected a trend in hurricanes to winters getting longer, the world getting hotter, and the ice caps getting smaller. But none of them imagined this. Or, if they did, they didn't get a lot of airtime. Storms aren't people. They were never people. We just want them to be because then they're magic. Then this isn't our fault. The actor probably existed. If myth turned white hair and moonlight into the precursors of lightning, if his certain fondness for rainy days led to rumors of magic, when really there was just a tendency to stay inside on sunny days. If his eyes were odd, wiggly, and somewhat clear, and ignorant folk found that unsettling, then it was all just that, ignorant. But ignorance leads to awe, and awe leads to fear, and both lead the long way around to myth. The boy certainly existed. He may have done some school plays, since there were still stage plays in Silverton, where there he was born, in autumn, after the fall. He lived there, grew there, loved there, and finally died there without children. However, if you go to Silverton, you won't find myths of a magic white-haired child that brought the storms. What you will find is coffee and tobacco, music and art, and a sad story of a young man that became an old man while his mother watched alone and stayed the same. A woman who, afterward, left and never returned. A woman who still lives and chases storms, or maybe still runs from them today. Still, even myths have some fact. People wouldn't say that he could fly if he hadn't tried. The story goes the boy actor had a friend that was a cloud, a little one, big enough to sit cross-legged on, and he could be found sitting, riding just that way, high above the lower rooftops, next to windows, after shows, looking down and eating cereal from a china bowl. Altogether, too much thought has gone into what sort of cereal the boy actor ate. Blame the lies around him that the storm started with his birth and that the world was business as usual until that day for this perception. But some people, in fact many people, insist the brand was Kellogg's. This is preposterous. The bowl may have contained cornflakes, although given that Silverton had been long since forgotten by idle travelers, and there was not yet a new postal service, it is far more likely the boy actor ate some form of oatmeal, granola, cream of wheat, Quaker oats. But then, I too am indulging a fairy tale. Nonetheless, there are factions sworn to the idea that in pre-fall, yet necessarily post-fall Silverton, there was a boy actor with lightning in his hair who performed Chekhov with mere mortals by day, rode a Nimbus cloud at night, eating pink hearts, yellow moons, orange stars, and green clovers. None of these stories get told in Silverton. The people there are far too busy telling stories of their own. Silverton, Colorado, the city in the mountains, the caffeinated, instigated cultural musical center of the middle of nowhere. The place where artists go and writers write, lovers die. A place where honest folk are up at nighttime and nobody ever sees the sun rise. How could they? It's nearly noon when the sun scales the San Juan. It's a place that no one would bother with if farmers didn't have to go through it heading north from Albuquerque. It's a place that wouldn't have survived even then if the storms could get over the mountains. Yes, they have theater there. Most places, people just know it for the coffee. So, how then does a white-haired child, eventually a white-haired man not so different from any other old-timer, spark such a story? There is an extent to which mythology runs in families. History is littered with the stories of light-haired men stepping out of lightning bolts, their awful fathers and their poor, poor mothers. In a new world, people are still people, and we've regressed in other ways. Once upon a time, it wasn't so noteworthy to fly. Flight, then. This is the real story. A young woman, or someone who looked like a young woman, came alone to Silverton with a white-haired, light-eyed child and a saxophone. She built a house, made a life, and, on warm nights, sat outside making music. Whether it was good music or not good music is entirely beside the point, in a world where most people live day to day. She played songs she loved, and songs she thought people ought to remember, and, through no fault of her own, helped attract the strangest sort of folk to what had been a small, out-of-the-way town in the mountains. Before the fall, Silverton enjoyed a bittersweet spot on a list of 1,000 places to see before you die. And the people now were just getting used to finally being ignored again. Suddenly, writers, painters, actors, scholars, musicians, madmen, lovers, poets all came. I don't know why they came. Not her. Few enough people passed through that little town. I don't imagine many of them talked about the music one woman played, but those that stayed did so for the peace, the solitude, and the coffee. A young boy actor grew up in this town as it became a city. He saw what magic still existed in the world, and he sought to find his place in it. He succeeded, as far as one could. He had a good life, a happy life, even a long life. Time passed, and he died. That is the real story. There is no witch, no mother of storms. The myth lives because, centuries later, so does she.
For Ella. We are the residue, echoes of the coffee machine's screens, bombshell girls with shrapnel teeth and gasoline lips, left over and splintered. She is some sort of princess, must be, fire crowns, flowers aflame, weaves me into the chains around her neck. I have stopped trying to make sense of her siren calls. She has framed baby dolls and lotus leaves fleeing her psyche, too much garden, not enough water, wilting, two girls, too many, never enough air, wilting. We get caught in the spider webs between our fingers, stuck in the whirlpools of butterfly-infested stomachs, but oh darling, I stay here for you. Ijika. Memories are so pliable when you need them to be. Remember the canvas-colored walls that we painted Fairyland onto, drew maps between home and Hogwarts over the freckled freeway, and scratched our elbow joints backseat banshees in training. I still have a rain poncho wizard robes beneath the passenger seat if you want yours back. This papier-mâché brain has tight-roped across this bridge to get to you too many times, spun spiderwebs from the supports planted in the bay, displaced and torn down. We have rebuilt it cleaner, with more room to breathe and less air. You draw stars with eyeliner pen on my collarbones to remind me we used to call Saturn home, even though we'd only been there twice, and I twisted my ankle, falling onto the second moon, clumsy me. I talk too much. Tell you about the girl and how it's been a year now, and there's so much real life that we forget what it's like to forget real life. We went to London for a couple hours after school last week. But we ran out of minutes on the red phone boxes and neglected our accents after a couple blocks of blocking out Oakland graffiti. When we talk now, it's the talk of fairies that have their wings tucked in the back of two big backpacks, and this eternity in human years will be over soon. And we will go back to Saturn war heroes. I know we will. Woo!